Okay, so today we're going to talk about proportions. And just like last time, we're going to start with vocab. So, definition of a proportion is an equation that sets two ratios equal to each other. So, it's going to look something like 1/3 equals 3/9. Okay, those are two ratios, and they are indeed equal to each other. And there's lots of ways to check this, and we'll on the next slide here, we're going to go over a bunch of different ways to check it. One easy one, reduce 3 over 9. I can divide both top and bottom by 3, and that would give me 1 over 3. And so they are equal to each other. But that's what a proportion is. It has two ratios equal. The way you actually read a proportion, you read it, you say 1 is to 3 as 3 is to 9. That's the way it's read. And you're just saying that they're equal to each other. That's it. So in this first example here is going to show you a lot of different ways that you can check to make sure these are actually proportional, that they're equal to each other. Okay, one way to do it is you look at the top numbers and say, okay, what could I multiply this by to get 4? Well, that's pretty easy. I would have to multiply by 4. 1 times 4 is 4. And then check, if I do 2 times 4, do I get this down here? And yeah, of course, 2 times 4 is 8. So I can multiply both the top and bottom by 4, and I get this fraction over here, this ratio. So that tells me, yes, they are equal. That is a proportion. Second way to look at it would be to say, okay, well, what could I divide 4 by to get down to 1? Well, I'd have to divide by 4. Well, if I do 8 divided by 4, is that going to give me 2? Yeah, it is. And so since I could divide both of these by the same thing and get what's over here, then that does make a proportion. Or I can just reduce 4 over 8. If I reduce 4 over 8, 4 goes into both of them. 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 8 twice. It reduces to 1/2. Same thing, they're equal. Another way I could do this and check to see if they're in proportion is what we call cross multiplying. Okay? Cross multiplying means that I take the bottom number over here on the left, multiply it by the top number on the right. So 2 times 4, which gives me 8. Then I take the bottom right, multiply by the top left. 8 times 1, that's 8. If those come out to be the same thing, then yes, this makes a proportion. So there's all sorts of ways, but you have to remember that these are being related by multiplication. Okay, so I have to be able to multiply by the same top and bottom, or divide by the same top and bottom, or I have to reduce it to simplest form and have them be the same thing, or cross multiply. But it's that relationship through multiplication to make sure they're related. And if any of those, you can use whichever one you want, and that's how you can check to make sure they're equal. Now, sometimes I'm going to have proportions where a number's missing. I need to find it. And I can use any of those things I just talked about up here. For example, on this, I notice the bottom here is 3, the bottom there is 9. So I can say to myself, well, if I just multiply by 3, that's going to give me 9. So what could I multiply by 3 to give me 6? And then I should know that that would be 2. Or I could reduce 6 over 9. And if I reduce that, 3 goes into both of them. 3 goes into 9 3 times. 3 goes into 6 twice. So if it's something over 3, it must be 2 over 3. Or I could cross multiply. I could use that fact that when I cross multiply, they have to be the same. And I could say, okay, well, 3 times 6 is 18. 9 times x is 9x, but that also has to be 18. It has to be equal. So now I have an equation, and I can just divide by 9 to solve this equation, and x would have to be 2. And that's it. So proportions, it's two ratios equal to each other, and there's lots of ways you can check to see that, yes, they are truly equal. And if you're missing a number, there's lots of different ways you can go about making sure it's right. You just have to remember, we're always talking about that relationship in terms of multiplication.